When an old Cessna plane was suddenly surrounded by two F-16s near the US-Mexico border, everyone thought the pilot was a drug courier. But when she turned her nose towards the sky, that pilot's eyes remembered the bombing mission she refused 10 years ago in Afghanistan to save 350 innocent children. That was the moment the real game began. Near the Mexican border, in the scorching heat of the Arizona desert, an old Cessna plane trembled through the dusty air. Its engine let out a steady but weary rumble, and the sun glinted off the plane's aged metal surface. Inside, a woman in her early 40s with a deep story in her eyes, dressed in worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, was at the controls. I am Lena Davies. Once, I was one of the sky's bravest souls. Now, I was merely the humble pilot of an old propeller plane. In the back of the plane, in simple cardboard boxes, were various medical supplies and medications. These were provisions I carried for the foundation my veteran father and I established to deliver to needy soldiers in the border region. However, suddenly, two shadows appeared on the horizon. They grew rapidly, approaching my Cessna. F-16s, modern fighter jets like predators hunting my Cessna, closed in, rocking their wings to signal land. My heart began to pound. This sudden encounter was a journey back in time for me, to that day 10 years ago in the dusty skies of Afghanistan, when I last flew as a phantom. A sharp voice on the radio commanded, "Unidentified aircraft, land immediately at the nearest military airfield. Otherwise, you will be shot down." I narrowed my eyes and looked at the F-16 pilot. In the eyes of that pilot, even in the eyes of my own country's jets, there was a hostile glint. That was the moment the real game began for me. I forcibly landed my plane at a military airfield near the Mexican border. Right next to the runway, fully equipped military personnel and police vehicles were waiting. As soon as I cut the engine, they rapidly approached the plane. Before I could even exit the open door, two military police officers had grabbed my arms. I was brought down and handcuffed. They looked at my old, medical supply-filled bag and my worn clothes and immediately labeled me a drug courier. As I felt the cold handcuffs on my wrists, my mind raced back to that bombing mission 10 years ago in the dusty skies of Afghanistan when I last flew as a phantom. At that moment, past and present painfully intertwined. I sat at the cold metal table in the interrogation room of the precinct. The fatigue on my face and my desert tan only made me look more like a drug courier. Across from me was Captain James Thorne, a young and ambitious military detective. On the table, various medical supplies and medications, taken out of their boxes, were scattered. Thorne, with furrowed brows, stared at me. "Your name is Lena Davies, correct? Former military. But you were discharged from the Army. And now you've been caught with the kind of medical supplies drug couriers use in the back of your Cessna. Explain yourself, Miss Davies. What are you involved in?" he asked. I responded calmly, "I am not a drug courier. These medications and supplies belong to the Veterans Hope Foundation, which my veteran father and I established. I was transporting them for needy soldiers in the border region. Everything is legal and invoiced." Captain Thorne chuckled. He shook his head mockingly. "A foundation? A former pilot discharged from the Army and now helping veterans. What a dramatic story. Where are your documents? What kind of foundation is this? Why are you transporting them in such an old plane? Why not a cargo plane?" I tried to explain repeatedly. I recounted the difficulties my father faced after returning from the war, how many veterans couldn't access treatment, and how we founded a small nonprofit for that reason. But Thorne only mocked me. Your story isn't convincing, Miss Davies. This must be a new method for a drug cartel. You concocted a Veterans Foundation cover to cross the border? The interrogation lasted for hours. I tried to tell him my entire past, my missions in Afghanistan, how I flew a covert stealth aircraft, the medals I received. But the mockery on Thorne's face grew steadily. A ghost plane. I think you've watched too many movies, Miss Davies. When was the last time you even flew an F-16? He asked, his voice condescending. I began to despair. No one believed me. My past, instead of being proof of my innocence, had become a subject of comedy. My call sign, the most crucial part of my identity, didn't even cross my mind. When Captain Thorne paused the interrogation, I felt myself collapse onto the chair, exhausted. The medical supplies on the table lay like criminal evidence. I overheard Thorne reporting to his superiors on the phone. It's a bit of a stretched story, sir. A veteran foundation and all. I suspect she's a typical drug courier. However, the voice from the other end of the phone made a demand that shook his confidence. Did you ask her call sign? Thorne frowned. Call sign? Why would I ask? She's just a former pilot discharged from the Army. The phone's voice sharpened. Just ask, Captain. If it's the right one, this is no ordinary courier. Thorne returned to the interrogation room. My eyes were closed, grappling with memories of the past. 10 years ago, that dark night in Afghanistan, the mission was to bomb a terrorist base with a covert stealth aircraft. Sensitive intelligence claimed there were no children or civilians at the base, but I, with my pilot's intuition, saw civilian movements, small bodies that could belong to children through the thermal cameras during the flight. I protested to my commander. Major, there are civilians and children there. I can't bomb them. My commander told me it was insubordination. The intelligence is clear, Lieutenant Davies. The bombing order has been given. Bomb. I refused. I disobeyed orders a second time. I refused to bomb, Major. I cannot hit those innocent people. This decision marked the end of my brilliant military career. I was dishonorably discharged from the Army. My medals were stripped. My name was tarnished. But I always believed I had done the right thing by refusing that bombing. I believed I had saved more than 350 innocent children. I carried this memory as a burden within me for years. Thorne's voice pulled me from these memories. Ms. Davies, he said, his voice devoid of its previous mockery, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you have a call sign? A call sign you used in the Army for a special operation? My eyes slowly opened. I looked at Thorne's face. This question was a ray of hope for me. It was an opportunity to use the most painful memory of my past as the key to my freedom. I took a deep breath. The atmosphere in the interrogation room shifted. Captain Thorne's question had opened a door to my past. My voice, for the first time, was clear and authoritative. Yes, Captain, I said. I had a call sign. Those who knew me in the Army called me that. Thorne readied his notepad. What was it? I fixed my gaze on Thorne's eyes, my voice echoing in the room. Flying Phantom. These two words froze the room. Thorne's face drained of color. His eyes widened in disbelief. Flying Phantom? Impossible, he mumbled. He immediately grabbed his radio, his voice trembling. Connect me to Command Center. Urgent. Get me Colonel Thompson. Captain Thorne burst out of the interrogation room. He ran down the corridor, muttering, Flying Phantom. It can't be. The urgent voices from the radio caught the attention of everyone in the precinct. Minutes later, Colonel Michael Thompson, the commander of the military airfield, burst through the precinct's door. His uniform was impeccable, his face a mix of astonishment and urgency. He rushed straight to the interrogation room. Seeing Thorne's face, he asked, "What's going on, Captain?" Thorne, with a trembling hand, pointed to the interrogation room. "Sir, inside is the flying phantom." Colonel Thompson's eyes widened. Looking at Thorne's face, he said, "What nonsense are you talking about, Captain? The flying phantom was discharged from the army. We thought she was dead." Thorne shook his head. "No, sir. She's inside. And she's Colonel Lena Davies." Colonel Thompson entered the interrogation room. My eyes were closed, taking a deep breath. Thompson's voice was like an echo from years ago. "Lieutenant Davies, is that you?" I opened my eyes. Thompson's face held the expression of regret and respect from that bombing mission 10 years ago. Thompson came up to me. "Lieutenant Davies, I can't believe I found you." I looked into Thompson's eyes. This was my former commander from Afghanistan, my commander whose order I had refused that day. Thompson's eyes were filled with tears. 10 years ago, the intelligence we received was wrong, Lieutenant. There were children. There were no terrorists in that building. There were hundreds of innocent people. You were right. That day, you saved over 350 innocent children. You also saved us from a grave mistake. We all knew, but none of us believed you. We couldn't protect you." His eyes were still filled with tears. Thompson continued, his voice lowering to a confidential tone. "Lena, I'm going to tell you a secret. It was confirmed that the decision you made that day was correct. However, we could not disclose this to avoid jeopardizing ongoing operations and to protect the Army's reputation. Thanks to your decision that day, hundreds of children go to school and play in the streets today. You are an unsung hero for us." He then turned to the other officers, his voice clear. "This incident, officers, was a result of a regrettable misunderstanding. This woman is a hero." When the interrogation room door opened, Captain Thorne and the other precinct members looked inside in astonishment. Colonel Thompson, his eyes still wet, stood in front of me. "Release her immediately," Colonel Thompson roared. "This is a hero. This is one of the Army's bravest pilots." The precinct froze. The woman they thought was a drug courier was now receiving an apology from a colonel and being declared a hero. Colonel Thompson helped me to my feet. "Davies," he said, his voice trembling, "I cannot apologize enough for this injustice done to you. The Army owes you." My eyes filled with tears. I nodded. After 10 years, my honor was restored. Thompson turned to the officers around him. "This woman," he said, his voice echoing in every corner of the room, "in Afghanistan, saved over 350 innocent children in a terrorist base we were about to bomb due to our faulty intelligence. She sacrificed her own career, risked being discharged from the Army. She is a true hero." I walked out of the precinct. Outside, waiting journalists and cameras flashed their lights. Thompson, shielding me, addressed the press. "Press members, this woman is not a drug courier. She is a hero, a war veteran. This incident was the result of a grave misunderstanding. There will be no further comments." A week later, my name was on headlines across the country. After 10 years, the story of the flying phantom had fully emerged. The decision to discharge me from the Army was acknowledged as unjust. All my medals and my rank were reinstated. I was no longer Phantom, but truly Colonel Lena Davies. After my discharge, the foundation I established with my veteran father, which provided free medical care to veteran war veterans, and the medical supplies in my plane, were revealed to be for this foundation. Thousands of veterans reached out to the foundation seeking help. Colonel Lena Davies was no longer just a pilot, but a symbol of hope and justice. She was a hero who listened to the whispers of the sky, sacrificed her career to protect the innocent, and finally had her honor restored. My story once again proved how deceptive appearances and prejudices can be. True heroism is sometimes hidden in the greatest sacrifice and sometimes in the wings of a phantom.